Few teams made their presence felt in 2021 free agency quite like the Chicago Bulls.
Trying to get there. Step back, Lonzo. And a lead!
It's not hard to see why Bulls fans are more excited for the coming season than they've been in years. So why now for Chicago? What made the team's front office push its chips to the middle of the table? And are the Bulls set up for long-term success? Or will they regret their 2021 additions for years to come? Before we continue with this week's episode on the Bulls, I want to remind you that like Chicago's front office, we at The Score are all in on getting this channel to 100,000 subscribers. So subscribe if you haven't already and tell your friends to do the same. On paper, the Bulls might be the NBA's most improved team, adding DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and underrated backup center Tony Bradley to a team already featuring 2021 All-Stars Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. Unfortunately for Chicago, games aren't won on paper. From a pure talent perspective, the Bulls should at worst be an Eastern Conference play-in team, with the goods to make the playoffs proper for the first time in 5 years. But there are some fit issues for head coach Billy Donovan to figure out. While Chicago boasts tremendous offensive potential with LaVine, DeRozan, Vucevic, and Ball, the defense could be a disaster, with LaVine and DeRozan providing zero resistance in front of the defensively challenged Vucevic. Ball and Caruso are great defensive additions on the perimeter, while sophomore forward and breakout candidate Patrick Williams has great two-way upside. But good luck building a respectable team D when your only reliable rotation defenders are 2/5 of your starting lineup and a backup guard.
What am I supposed to do with this?
The Bulls also traded the team's best defensive player in Thaddeus Young as part of the sign-and-trade deal with San Antonio that landed DeRozan in Chicago. A future first-round pick and multiple second-rounders were also sacrificed so the Bulls could get their hands on DeRozan. Despite never becoming a reliable long-range threat, DeMar's remained one of the league's most consistent scorers, and he's become more efficient than ever as a scorer and playmaker as he's gotten older. So it's no wonder why a team in need of a talent infusion targeted the four-time All-Star. But trading Young and 3 picks for the right to pay DeRozan $85 million guaranteed over his age 32, 33, and 34 seasons seems unnecessary.
DeMar.
Okay.
DeMar, I say it, the less I like it.
Is this guy even a basketball player?
Especially when the team had already executed an $85 million sign-and-trade for Ball and committed $37 million over 4 years to Caruso. Ball's improved shooting makes him a more capable off-ball threat than he once was, but you lose some of the value in his playmaking genius the more the ball's out of his hands, which it often will be playing on a team with 3 high-usage scorers like LaVine, DeRozan, and Vooch. Now, there's a valid argument to be made that there's incredible defense-bending value to be found in fielding a lineup full of players capable of both creating for themselves and others, as that playmaking can be further leveraged when the gravity of their teammates is creating advantages. But I still feel like given how Chicago's busy offseason tipped off, spending money and draft capital could have been better served balancing the roster. Though DeRozan will likely spend the majority of his time on the wing alongside Ball and LaVine, he'll very much be a point forward type because he's the least valuable off-ball threat of Chicago's scorers. That means Kobe White, Chicago's 7th overall pick just 2 years ago, and a guy who averaged roughly 15 points and 5 assists as a 20-year-old sophomore last season, is suddenly the team's 4th guard. And that's if he's even ahead of Caruso. The former Laker is a great defensive player and capable ball handler off the bench. But paying a non-shooting reserve more than $9 million a year for 4 years to be your team's 5th guard wouldn't really make sense. Perhaps White will be dangled in trade talks to bring the final piece of the puzzle to Chicago. Because, to be honest, White's trade value as a potential high upside young guard might be the Bulls' only path to contention now that they can't trade a future first-round pick until 2027.
Wait, what?
Remember that months before trading a first-rounder and multiple picks for DeRozan, the Bulls gave up 2 first-rounders for Vucevic in a deal that also sent Wendell Carter to Orlando. One of those traded picks became 2021 number 8 selection Franz Wagner, while the second of the 2 traded first-rounders is only top 4 protected in 2023. Add it all up, And the Bulls gave up 3 first-rounders, 5 draft picks in total, Carter, Young, and Otto Porter's expiring contract for Vucevic and DeRozan.
That's even more than I thought.
Aside from whatever they can eventually get for White in a potential trade, Chicago's very much all in right now from an asset standpoint, but without the championship ceiling that usually comes with that. Unless you're wearing rose-colored glasses, Benny the Bull-colored glasses, you're not going to pencil the Bulls in ahead of Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Miami, or even a dysfunctional Philly team. They also don't have the overall balance or depth of a Trae Young-led Hawks team that just came within 2 wins of the NBA Finals. A realistic projection for the Bulls is probably scrapping with the Celtics for the Eastern Conference's 6th and 7th spots, with an absolute ceiling of a second-round appearance for the first time in 7 years if things break right for them.
Very underwhelming.
It would be easy to clown the Bulls for going all in for that. But the truth is, they didn't have much of a choice. LaVine's headed for 2022 free agency and enters the final year of his contract, having never made the playoffs, never finishing higher than 11th in his conference, and never being part of a team that's won more than 31 games in a season through 7 NBA campaigns between Chicago and Minnesota. When Team USA finished the Olympic tournament with 5 straight victories, it was the first time since college that LaVine had experienced even a 4-game win streak. He was very much expected to be a free agent flight risk if the Bulls didn't surround him with some real game-changing talent that gives him a chance to finally compete on a nightly basis. Are the Bulls a contender? No. Do they have a path to getting there? Probably not. But have they shown LaVine they're at least committed to try building one around him? No doubt. It may sound underwhelming, but the Bulls building a team that now projects as even solidly above average was likely necessary to keep LaVine in Chicago long term. And if the 26-year-old All-Star does commit to Chicago, the Bulls will probably tell you it was all worth it, even if they're not competing for titles anytime soon. You can quibble over whether LaVine is even the caliber of star teams should be bending over backwards to keep happy and keep in town. But what's the alternative for Chicago? I suppose the Bulls could have done nothing, continued thinking long-term, and risked losing LaVine in free agency because they aspire to land a better young star. But then a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs in a half-decade would have been kickstarting another 5-year rebuild just to end up with a player like LaVine, if you're lucky. Every franchise has grand ambitions of drafting the next Giannis, Luka, or LeBron when they tank their way to the bottom. But more often than not, the end result is a collection of players nowhere near generational. And don't sleep on just how good LaVine has become.
Zach LaVine, first time in his career with 50.
Players who average roughly 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on 51, 42, 85 shooting don't grow on trees. It won't end in a finals trip, but LaVine could very well be to this year what Devin Booker was to last season. A young star who finally gets his due on a more competitive team after he was unfairly labeled an empty calorie scorer, despite steadily improving year after year with little talent around him. With LaVine on the bench last season, the Bulls played like a bottom 7 overall team in terms of net rating. With their all-star on the court, they still weren't great, but they performed better than play-in teams like Charlotte, Washington, and San Antonio. Until LaVine actually signs an early extension with the Bulls or re-ups with Chicago next summer, there is a worst-case scenario to consider whereby the Bulls flop this season, lose LaVine for nothing in free agency anyway, and then end up with a DeRozan-Vucevic ball core that finds itself out of yearly playoff contention without actual lottery picks to show for it because the team had traded all those picks trying to keep LaVine happy. But for the sanity of any Bulls fans watching this, let's not go down that road right now. Chicago's one of the most improved teams in the league, and while there are some obvious questions to ask about the team's defense, short-term ceiling, and long-term outlook, we can't hate on the Bulls for doing what they needed to do with LaVine's future hanging in the balance. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.